Um, I'd like to welcome everybody to Tribe Talk, a dialogue. I think it's important. I appreciate your curiosity and the desire to be a part of our tribe. And the reason why I call it a tribe is because it's a group of like-minded people who use the same kind of terminology, the same kind of culture, have the same values. So I really appreciate the fact that you have the same curiosity and you want to focus within our tribe on improvement. So to start, a quick notice that, this is not a particular organization. It's a group of like-minded people. So the dialogue is one for improvement, but it doesn't concentrate on anything particular within any particular organization, state, or anything like that. The overarching expressed motive here is to move towards the betterment of the tribe as a whole. So I really appreciate everybody's interest and curiosity to be here. I wish to thank everybody who kind of gave me some input on this. I like the fact that everybody is attending. That's something. And but especially I want to recognize the people that have contributed either by doing a small session or providing input to make this all happen and come together with everybody. So thank you very much. To the most part, the people that have volunteered to do the sessions, I really appreciate that. You didn't have to put yourself out like that. There's a certain vulnerability to running something like this, and it's a special person that says, yeah, I'll go ahead and do that for you, and I appreciate it. Some housekeeping notes before we start. Since this is a video teleconference and it's new and a lot of people haven't done this, there's probably going to be some glitches, so bear with us. And if you have a problem while you're watching, you get kicked off, it locks up, don't be afraid to shut off and come back in. It's perfectly fine, and it's just one of those things with technology that we'll all have to get used to. I appreciate the participation in the conversation. So if you have something to say, I certainly don't want to do all the talking. I talk enough as it is. I'm really looking to learn from you, as I hope you're looking to learn from others as well. So jump in and be a part of the conversation. I think it'll be beneficial, but please be considerate of others. So if somebody's got the floor and talk, listen to them, think about it, and be pretty concise if you can be. We're limited to an hour here just to not take everybody's whole day up. So I'm going to share a presentation now to get us to start off. And if you would please let me know if you can see the presentation.
Got it.
Got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so as with every little presentation like this, we'll start off with a kind of a rules thing. It's really not rules, it's just, for the room. Maintain a positive environment. Your sound, keep the bandwidth down a little bit. Try to be clear and concise. Please share your ideas with others, because that's how we will learn here. And then, as I said before, and I always like to start with this. This is a dialogue, not a discussion. Does anybody know the difference between the two? Bueller?
You're allowed to listen, Bo.
So why do I say dialogue versus discussion?
Dialogue is just talking to each other spontaneously and without a preformed agenda.
Okay. Anybody like to expound on that just a little bit more? And you're on it, Greg, by the way.
The only thing I would throw in is that usually there's a decision-based, the discussion leads to a decision. where dialogue leads to building understanding.
Okay, so we're trying to recognize what other people are thinking about and what their point of view is, their perspective, so that we can maybe grow a little bit, either change our opinion or not necessarily ask somebody else to change their opinion, but to hear what has to be said. Whereas a discussion, as you come into it, you probably have a position, a bias, and you're going to stick with it. So that's why I asked that we use this as a dialogue, not a discussion. So just a topical agenda here. We don't have to stick with this. We can go with the flow. I don't have a problem with that. But some of the things that we have decided to discuss, and the people who had volunteered here is up on the board now. So I wanted to start with brain-based learning and why it works. Does anybody know why we talk about brain-based learning and why we use it, how it's important? Don't all speak up at once now. It's all right.
Because MSF says so.
Besides that.
Oh, okay.
Because it matches how we as adults learn.
Okay. Any other thoughts on this?
Maybe it engages the entire physiology of our bodies. It's more engaging than pointing fingers.
Okay.
I think for me, it's more about hands-on learning, helps us to retain the information a lot better than possibly reading.
Anybody else? How about if somebody's got their Rider Coach guide open, can you read the paragraph on brain-based learning on page 33?
I can do it. Brain-based learning refers to how the brain works in processing and retaining information. Primary findings of research on the value of using brain-based learning processes in an education and training program indicate that programs should have 3 characteristics regarding an effective learning experience. 3 characteristics are active processing, relaxed alertness, and orchestrated immersion. The BRC takes advantage of brain-based learning by having multiple interactive learning activities during the formal classroom instruction.
Okay, so if we're talking about active processing, what does that mean to you besides the words on the page?
You're forcing people to think about what they're trying to learn.
Okay. When people are thinking, what are they trying to do with the information?
Well, they're trying to make it a part of who they are.
Okay. Would that be like making meaning?
Applying it towards something that's happened in their life.
Okay, previous experiences are the basis of future learning, yeah?
Deciding why it has value to them now.
I like that a lot, Lynn, because the value is the meaning. That's why it's important to them. So if we use the previous experiences to make our meaning, that's active processing. So good discussion, good dialogue there. What's relaxed alertness then?
Is that they don't have pressure put on them from whatever source, that they're able to take in information without having it be impeded by stress or worry or competition or any of that stuff.
There's a little phrase that I've read in the Rider Coach guide under adult learning. Does anybody remember what that is?
High challenge, low threat?
That's it. Absolutely. So what's threatening?
Fear of not succeeding, fear of not meeting expectations of themselves or other people that's put on them, fear of getting embarrassed, fear of getting hurt for a few.
Fear of the unknown too. They don't know what's going on. They've never experienced this before.
That's a huge thing. You know, we have a lot of anxiety going on in our lives right now because we don't know what's about to come. So when we have students, we have to consider that. What are they feeling threatened by? But what's the other part of that?
High challenge.
And why is that important?
Well, I mean, taking the, the smart kid in school that's, in a curriculum that's lower than his level, they get bored. And so they tune out and don't pay attention maybe.
How do we react to challenges? Is that important?
Yeah, very important.
Why?
It's how you see yourself to a challenge.
Does that kind of get some mindset maybe?
Well, do people learn more from their successes or their failures?
Good question.
Well, it depends because sometimes if you look at your challenge and you fail, you hopefully will go back and try to correct the mistake so you can succeed.
So what would
as a
prevent
coach, are more of our students successful? Or
can you say that again, Matt, please?
as a rider coach, as we watch our students progress, are they usually successful at first, or do they fail a few times and then become successful incrementally?
Anybody want to answer, Matt?
Well,
I'm not sure that I would call it failure. I call it productive struggle. And I think through MSF curricula, we scaffold them so they theoretically don't fall as far and hopefully don't in the actuality.
So are we reducing the threat of failure by providing challenge in the right environment?
I hope so. I think so.
I think so too. All right, so we kind of beat that one to death. What about orchestrated immersion? Anybody?
Well, I mean, the combination of the
Plans itself.
course and the classroom experiences, and then the range experiences. I think if you do it right, they kind of tie together and feed off of each other. They kind of make a learning loop where they can relate experience that they've had in the e-course or in their own life, the stuff we talk about in the classroom, and then likewise on the range, we can pull those things together.
So complex experiences, not just one little thing, but multiples.
Yeah.
And allow the student to put those things together. You got all the answers today, Lynn. Why aren't you running this?
I don't know.
I don't know either. Okay. So we'll jump down to how students learn best. Why is it important that we discuss the social, emotional, and sensory experiences? I was asking myself that question, but anybody can answer it.
Everybody learns slightly differently.
Can you go a little bit deeper on that, Alan?
Sure. Based on your learning style and personalities and what works best for you, life experiences, things like that. Everybody has a different methodology. So if you just give them one type, you don't immerse them completely with all the different methodologies, then you're only hitting a part of the group. And it may be the wrong part.
To piggyback on what Alan is saying, we also have people in varying degrees on the AVARC scale, the auditory, visual, and reading and kinesthetic learners. So we have all those different styles, and by immersing them in these variety of experiences, we're guaranteeing that everyone steps forward.
Interesting fact that you're bringing up the learning styles, and I think we'll get that in the next session a little bit more. But do we learn better when we're around other people, and why?
Doesn't that depend on who you are and how you learn?
Perhaps.
I think socially, I think what I find a lot is that you'll find the students grouping up with certain people and bouncing stuff off each other, especially if they tend to be timid or, you know, afraid to ask questions.
What about you, Deanna? What do you think? I got you smiling. You don't care?
I don't know. Not too sure.
You're not too sure. So, how do we find out if what we're thinking about is correct or not? Do we have to test it somehow?
Feedback.
Feedback? How do we get feedback?
Watch your class.
Okay. If you're the coach, sure, you watch your class, but what if you're a student? How do you receive feedback?
Well, sometimes it's obvious, like you made the turn successfully.
Okay.
You stayed within the lines.
Anybody else?
They ask.
Reflection.
Is it easier to ask a fellow student than it is a rider coach if their thoughts are correct sometimes? Go ahead, Rita. You got that. I can see you. Yeah, comfort. Hey, Rita. Can't hear you. Okay, so if we can ask other people, hey, how does this look? Do we learn more if we get confirmation back, or if different ideas flow across and we can learn from them?
So a supportive environment is more supportive.
Okay.
Well, Don, I would add in that I teach in the military program, so I have a wide skill variation in the students. You know, a lot of them show up with years of experience, just don't have the card. And I watch all the time the experienced riders become or we help them become the active model of, because they saw my demo, but now they get to watch and observe the other students, and they use that as a measuring stick of their own work, right? To say that they self-reflect and understand what skill they're demonstrating or should be demonstrating, the other students are reflective models for them also. So you have to recognize that they self-learn as a group in spite of us.
So commonality of knowledge, values, purposes, Hank?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, a lot of times I feel pretty useless on the range if I just let them talk. They get it. And I just need to kick cones. So
you talked about being reflective, so we'll skip down to that. How important is being reflective? How does that play into it?
You know, I use that for my feedback of where are you at? But they also do that between each other all the time of here's what that you see their dialogue, if I can say that. But you can hear their chatter and get them working on it. They'll the course most of the time is very straightforward, and they'll coalesce the answer far better than using me as a resource. I'd rather have them keep me out of it. You guys have to figure it out. Their learning is a much higher level. If they think through it, then I give them an answer.
We're being reflective now on our own processes. So we're learning at an exponential rate just being on here. And I think it's the same for students. And I think when we step out of the way and exactly what Hank was saying, allow them to interact with each other, they grow at a rate that many times surprises us.
Yeah, that's what I was going to add as well. A lot of times I'll be on the range alone. So I do have to move cones. So I'll set something up where, okay, you know, work as a group and here's what you're going to reflect on. And it really works well with like an exercise like 9, where you say, okay, you know, different techniques worked for you. There's a couple things you're still struggling on. Help each other. I'm going to be listening. And then I'll always go in and kind of capstone it at the end or come up with something. But it's amazing what the students will come up with on their own, working together on something when you give them basically a project to work that way.
Any other comments? Looking at the slide, is there anything else on brain-based learning that you would like to talk about? Because I don't want to take up all the time with this. I'm going to move on a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to add a couple things. One is when you talked about a high challenge, some people might interpret that to mean too much challenge. So if somebody as a rider coach has to identify when that's overload. It has to be challenging, but we don't want people interpreting high challenges as make them try to do something they're not ready to do or incapable of doing. But it has to be challenging for them at an incremental level. The other thing I like to add is that as you read what the text says in the Rider Coach Guide, it also applies to the range. So if you look at those 3 items under brain-based learning, active processing or relaxed alertness, that also applies to the range. It's mentioned in classroom only, originally in the Rider Coach Guide, just to get people thinking about how powerful the classroom can be. But I think in a future cast or a future Zoom, it might be fun to get into a discussion about how these 3 characteristics apply to range.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate that. All right, we'll move on quickly. And we kind of already discussed this when the fact that learner styles was brought up. And I'm going to shoot down to the bottom bullet here real quick, because I think that's kind of important. There's been research done, and I've shared this, I think, with Mark. You still hear Mark? Good. That learner styles have been proven not to have any real effect at all. But 82% of the people still believe in the myth of learner styles, the oral, visual, kinesthetic, and verbal being different ways that people learn. The truth of the matter is they are how people learn, but it's a combination thereof. Would anybody like to take that and run with it a little bit?
Well,
thoughts?
Yeah, I think that, for example, when we ride the demo, if you've got that second coach, the second coach is providing a narrative while the demo is being ridden. So you've got visual and auditory.
Why is that important?
Well, it's going to help. Those things in combination are either going to target the people that have a strength in one category or the other. And if people are working best under the combination, then they've got the combination going.
Okay. So people may have preferences, but we all learn with all of those to a certain extent, unless you have some kind of disability that doesn't allow you to sense one of those somehow. I like to relate this a little bit to, a baby. A mother has a baby. She's holding the baby and looking at the baby, and the baby's always listening and seeing and feeling what the mother is doing. So as the mother's looking at the baby, if the mother smiles, you'll naturally see the baby smile as well. And that's because of the connection between the baby and the mother and all the senses that are happening. It's a sort of modeling, and we model a lot in the courses that we give. So now I'll jump back up a little bit. So when we talk about learners or types of learners, and we have these 4 types written across the top there, can somebody tell me what the differences between them are? Why is it important? And it's helpful to look on page 36, please do so. Anybody?
Well, the dependent person will take it on their, I don't even know if you're hearing me, but
We are, Sal.
the dependent person takes it upon themselves to go ahead, and that might be also part self-directed, but the dependent part is going to want to know, and he's going to take the time to go ahead and find out the information to the best of his ability. At least that's how I see it.
Would anybody else like to give another view?
I think the dependent person needs to be told what to do, more so than a self-directed person who already kind of can figure it out by themselves.
So hi, this is Belinda. Sorry, you can hear a lawnmower. I'm outside. I think more dependent. I don't think it's about telling them more, but I think I've noticed that more dependent students need a little bit more feedback. They're the ones that come up and go, "How did I do?" or "What can I do better?" And so I always kind of feel like the dependent ones are the ones that need a little bit more, and just kind of then you need to like kind of help them self-direct a little bit. But I think they are the ones that need to be a little bit more, more direct and, hey, this would help a little bit more. This may be a little bit more feedback. And then of course the self-directed ones, those are the ones that, they can watch and they can come up and they go, next time I'll do better. Next time I'll do this. Next time I'll do that.
So dependent and self-directed are the 2 extremes of the types of learners that we get. And I go back to a man named Malcolm Knowles a lot here, because he talks about moving from dependence to self-directed. So how can we take a dependent learner who needs you to tell them the directions and give them specific guidance to a more self-directed learner who seeks the guidance, asks for feedback, and kind of focuses their own attention on the learning? How do we move them from one end to the other of the spectrum?
Well, I think one way is the self-assessment chart. It's to get them thinking about what they're doing early on, and then the interaction with the reflections to get them thinking about how is it working for them.
Any other thoughts?
As far as the range exercises go, we kind of state things for them to do all day long, and then one of the exercises we ask them to find the safe gap.
Okay. Anybody else?
At the risk of stepping up and getting hit again like a whack-a-mole, I still take just a little issue with the slide and the title, Types of Learners versus Learning Styles, because I worked at a boarding school for children who learn differently, and learner styles are very visual in front of you there. You can see them. I think to get somebody to move from dependent to self-directed involves us as rider coaches being multimodal and finding out what's making them tick and help giving them the chance to excel without looking for our approval or not.
I like that thought. The thought that you want them to be self-generating in the learning so that we're not there anymore. And when you say multimodal, yes, this is visual, but it's also text. And we're also listening at the same time. So it's a combination of everything. You may be attracted to one or the other, or have a preference, but without it all, it has less meaning. As an example.
Understood. I'm not as physically whacked as I was a few minutes ago, but we're good.
All right. Hey, man, I know what it's like. I'm getting whacked here myself. Speaking of being whacked, what are your thoughts, Ray?
For the topic, I think for the topic, it's mostly asking questions, figuring out what is behind the eyes of the individual. Find out by asking them leading questions to see what their thought process is. Once you discover that, then you can again feed them at the level that they are and help them move toward being self-directed. I think why is really good to ask a lot. What did you do and why did you do it? And get people thinking reflectively, and then tend to start to think on their own if their desires of that are capable of it.
Any other thoughts?
I think sometimes the dependence, you know, part of that comes from fear or inhibitions or you know, outside pressures. So making the student more comfortable or allowing them to be in an environment where they're not going to feel like they're getting bashed on, you know, will help them to rise up to be a little more independent.
It's difficult to be vulnerable to having other people not share your same opinion, isn't it? or share your knowledge, or, you know, to throw something out there thinking it's right and not having it stick and everybody to tell you it's not. It's kind of like whack-a-mole they put out there. So yeah, I get it. And I think you're on point there, Lynn. All right, so I'm gonna move along, and I'm gonna kind of turn it over to Alan now, because we're gonna discuss BRC range exercise number 8, improving on the range. And if you want to, Al, just tell me when to click the slides and I'll move forward for you.
All right, let's see, you're gonna give me control of it?
You can try.
Or no, actually, why don't you just give me, make me presenter? Might be easier. Let's see.
All right. Didn't work. I'm gonna try one more time here.
Still looking at yours. So you gotta stop sharing. Hand it to me.
I've made you the co-host. Can you do it?
Yeah, you gotta stop sharing first. Wait a minute. I think
All
I've
right,
just gotten it.
go ahead.
I do got it. Hold on a second. I've got control. All right. Get in there. I'm gonna share that screen. Go. Should see the beginning of a BRC, right?
There we go.
Exercise 8. Let me bounce this over here. There you go. You guys see it okay?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All right. So I'm going to try and do a combination of, you know, everybody who knows me know I like to do very much ask the open-ended questions and get the feedback and help, you know, guide the conversation and let you guys do everything. We're going to do a combination of that. But so really, we talk about exercise 8. Why do we choose exercise 8 to have a conversation about is, you know, throughout the quality assurance world, 3 or 4 exercises have begun to boil to the top of exercises that are seen over and over again as items that come up in QA reports. Exercise 8 seemed to be the top of the pile by quite a bit. So we've, you know, in a lot of our QA SECs and IRETs and things like that, as we ask questions, we begin to see, they're kind of reinforced that there's not a big understanding of exercise 8, and what can we do to begin to make that overall holistically better done, better understood, more of usefulness to the coaches and the students ultimately, because that's who we're out there for. So we're going to take a few minutes here to talk about exercise 8. We'll talk about 2 or 3 things that we see a lot of in it, and also get a better understanding of it. So really, big picture, which is kind of where we want to start, is why is it important? And I'm going to hit the button. Hey, it worked. Good. Look at that. So if we look at why it's important, is that number right there? Is the MSF naturalistic study. 35% of motorcycle accidents that had multi-vehicles were, you know, a rear end strike, which basically means the motorcycle did not stop before it hit the object in front of it. And if you look at that, you say, step back and say, okay, well, why the heck is that? And that's, you know, the combination effect. Did they stop in time? Did they see it happen? Did they perceive the issue? You know, so it really makes exercise 7 and exercise 8 very important in how we do this. And of course, this was done after the updated BRCU came out, or the BRC came out. So, you know, it just kind of feeds into, you know, better why those exercises exist and how much emphasis we should pay on them. So jump to the next one. And this is right out of the Rider Coach Guide. And I know I want to emphasize that at the very bottom of that page where it says, if you guys can see it, says this is Rider Coach Guide, page 89, version 4, the new version that's up on RETS.org. So if you don't have this and haven't gone to RETS.org and downloaded the newest Rider Coach Guide, I'd recommend you do so. So it really says, you know, key point of this exercise to illustrate the difference between braking distance and total stopping distance, which really is adding the perception reaction time. And I'm reading this a little bit. I don't like to read slides, but I know we have people on the phone that really aren't seeing this. So I want to drive it across it also. So really that begins to step back and you say, okay, exercise 7, the first part, you know, right, it's all about stopping distance. Your front wheel crosses that Q cone and you put the brakes on and you stop in hopefully the shortest distance possible. That's part 1 or part 3 really of stopping distance, not part 1 and 2. Really, when you get in the second part of that exercise, we begin to introduce the, you know, the hand signal goes out and you get them to see that see that item in front of them, and then they perceive the problem and they react to it and they put the brakes on and their stopping distance goes farther. So part 2 of 7, this builds on that nicely by adding that piece. Everybody understood so far? Any questions so far? Okay, simple, straightforward. All right, let's jump to the next part. So the 1 second delay. Why is that present? And this is one of the items that we see a lot of is people perceive that the 1 second delay means something different than what it actually means. And that really, if you look at that, the mental side of saying perception, we are perceiving that there is a problem in front of us and we are reacting to that problem. That is the 1 second delay. We hear a lot of it out there saying, well, this is just a 1 second delay. And then really say why, or this is about distraction. That's the big one out there is we keep hearing people say it's about distraction. It's not. It's about perception and reaction. And that perception reaction time has kind of been tested a bunch of times. And that we see that middle bullet point there of 3/4 of a second to 1.5 seconds is a typical perception reaction time we see out there. So it's not about distraction, it's about perception reaction time. So a suggested creative practice to help further emphasize this might be, look at that 1 second delay. You define it at the beginning and say 1 second delay represents this perception reaction time, and then stop saying it. Stop using 1 second delay. Stop using those words altogether. From then on, it's just, now we're going to add in normal perception reaction time. And that kind of really begins to drive it home. And it's not about distraction. That doesn't come up maybe in the very tail end about it towards the end of reflection. It's all about that 1 second delay meaning perception reaction time. Questions so far?
To my thought, the delay represented a delay in perception time, and they get the signal and the reaction time is built in. They're reacting to the signal. So is the reaction time actually part of the 1 second delay?
The reaction time is reaching forward and pulling and squeezing the brake. That little gap there between the time they go, oh crap, this guy stopped in front of me. right? So it is kind of built into that 1 second. So it's not the perception of, you know, the rider's coming down the range and looking up and seeing you pull your hands out. He says, "Oh, okay, I got to stop now." That's perception. I've got to stop. And then reaction, reaching over, squeezing the brake, and then how long does it take you to stop? How many feet?
Right, but the 1 second happens before they get the signal. I guess maybe
You're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. It does. That's why you cross the lanes. You wait for 1 second. And you give the signal. I'm sorry about that. Yes, you're right. You're accurate. Okay. All right. So that last pull I have at the bottom there, I'll read out, is that if you want to add distraction, wait till the tail end of reflection, and say, you know what? Now, on top of everything else, what if you were distracted? How would that further affect your perception reaction time? And you're looking for them to drive that conversation. Well, it's going to get farther out. It's going to have to, you know, and it's going to make it worse. So use those pieces at the bottom of the exercise to kind of guide you at the bottom of it. And look on page 89. I suggest everybody read page 89 of the Rider Coach Guide on this exercise. It's only 1 page, not even 1 page, probably 3/4 of a page, and take a look to understand it. So there's one part of it. The other part is just demonstrations. Let's talk about that for just a minute. And we'll hit on demonstrations. Really, we're looking for consistency, smoothness, and consistent braking, consistent riding. So it takes practice. And then you got the quote there from the Rider Coach Guide. They need to be precise. The speeds need to be precise. Reaction times accurate. Braking operation should be crisp and smooth. Don't skid. We know what that'll do. And you need to practice extensively, you know, especially when you get up there and speed at 25. You know, sometimes you got to choose the right bike to get to 25. Sometimes not all bikes will do that. Other times you know, you choose a bike that has poor brakes, and it changes things. So practice and make sure you do it. Then you get the 1 second signal. Oh, another question?
No, I was going to say kind of relative to that. I like when, you know, if you set it up about, oh, you know, the first part, they begin braking at the cones, they finish stopping, that's your braking, since we did that in the last exercise in part 1. And if you can kind of call out as the demo is happening, when they get to the second run, where did anyone notice, where did they start braking? And usually from where they began to brake to where they finished the stop, it's if the demo's good, it's the same distance as when they began braking at the cones to where they stopped. So you can kind of draw out. So the braking distance didn't change. What changed? How come we control this space between now and then? And it was because of the delay in perception plus the reaction time.
Yep. No, 100% agree. Yeah.
And I just want to also
be more reaction time.
I like the idea of that language of talking about the normal perception and reaction time, because this is a question that is amazingly often missed on the knowledge test, in spite of it coming up numerous times. So it's just another place to get that repetition in of the verbiage.
Okay, good. Somebody else had something?
Well, my question is that, yes, you perceive what you're about to do, but at a higher speed, you just said that the distance between the stop and your reaction time was the same. So, or maybe I misunderstood that. But
I meant the distance between the first run and the second run at each speed.
Oh, the first run or the second run.
When they begin to brake at the cones on the first run and stop, you know, they have their braking distance there. In the second run, they begin the braking later. But if you consider where the brakes were actually applied to where the stop finished, the braking distance part of that should be about the same as it was on the first run.
Okay. Now I'm in track now. Thank you.
No problem. Maybe I mashed it up in the telling.
I think another thing to consider here. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Another thing to consider here is that you know, it's one of those situations where you just let the students discover. You lead them to the learning and just let them see what's going on. So rather than talking about it too much, it's kind of a fine line there. You just let them get that, oh, wow, aha moment just by seeing the difference between stop 1 and stop 2, and maybe ask them a few questions, just general open-ended ones, and let them come up with those light bulb moments, you know?
Yeah, without a doubt. And one of the things that I'll throw out there is that after the last run, you know, that he shuts the engine off and sits there, and you kind of look at the intersection and look at him and say, what just happened here? Here's the intersection. Here's him. What just happened to him? And let them go, he's hurting. He just tagged that car or truck or whatever. And why do you think that is? And just throw it out and let them, you know, come to it from there.
Well, one of the things that I've added to the end, what you were just referring to, is that imagine if you were on your phone or somebody is on their phone and what reaction time is going to, what happens.
Right.
There's no real stop. You have actually crashed because you were distracted and you didn't perceive and you didn't react. And and the only reason I bring that up is because there are just more and more and more phones being used, whether it's for navigation or you can talk on the phone while you're riding. So I try to put that in and saying, hey, back off the phone, just ride and know what you're doing when you're riding.
Sure. Yeah. Just as long as it's, you know, after they've come to the realization about the perception reaction, you can throw that in. So.
That's what I was going to say as well, Alan.
Yep.
Sometimes at the very end, again, after we talk about the normal perception reaction time, I'll say, does anybody have a smartphone? And somebody might pull one out. I said, okay, don't look at the screen yet. Just have it in your hand. And I'll have my stopwatch. And I say, okay, tell me what time it is. And usually it's 2.5, 3 seconds. And I'm saying, see, now that's an extra 3 seconds. So if somebody's distracted looking down at a radio or a control or taking your eyes off the road for a minute, think of how many seconds that might be that it even adds to make it even worse.
There you go. Yeah, all good stuff.
When we do the second batch at the higher speed, you know, and then, you know, in the discussion talk about, well, and this is, you know, 25 miles per hour by real life speeds is pretty slow. You know, how about highway speeds and how the stakes get ramped up the faster we're going. One of the things I like to bring out is that, you know, at 60 miles an hour, we're traveling about 88 feet in 1 second. And on our full size range, I can say, gee, from on the short end of the range, the distance from this painted corner line to that painted corner line is 80 feet. So you're going a little more than that in just 1 second. And that kind of gives them a visual on distance traveled. And you can do that on any range, really, you know, to kind of figure out that range. And that, I think, opens some eyes to what's happening out on the highway.
Yeah. I've heard people say that, you know, this is at 25 miles an hour, which is city riding. What if you're doing 55 and do the same thing? What's that 1.5 second look like? Like you just said, what's that distance expand out to? But good. All right, let's take it down to the last part. That 1 second signal, and this is another area where some confusion has happened in the past, is who provides that. And I know in the old ARC, it was the guy on the riding the demo that would do the 1/1000 and then stop or apply the brakes. But in this case, it's really preferably, obviously, if you're on a single range, you're doing your own coaching, then you've got to do it. But the preference there is the secondary person who's not riding the motorcycle is back in the corner, and they're the ones doing 1/1000, put their arms out. Some rationale behind that is that during some of the testing, it was found that the person riding the motorcycle, the faster the motorcycle went, the shorter the 1 second was. So faster you rode, the faster you count. So they're obviously trying to take that away and minimize that and push that off the rider to do the counting. Any questions there?
Shouldn't it be both? If you're reinforcing that you're only allowing for perception time, shouldn't it be both so that you're reinforcing the fact that this rider is executing a 1 second delay simply because we're increasing perception, we're adding perception reaction to the stop?
You know, the person riding the motorcycle, doing that demo is probably one of the toughest demos you can do in the BRC. I think the theory is let them ride and let them focus on what they're doing and having nice smooth control and consistency. I'll let the guy in the corner of the range handle the other part also. mean, can you do both? You might, but you could also get some confusion in there. You might break before his hands go out. And if he is counting short order, I could see that happening. So I'd use caution there. You know, mixed messages.
All right. We may need to save this for another discussion. I disagree, but I can shut up and color.
Yeah, we can certainly talk about it more. Yeah, let's kind of push on through this one. What time we got? And we got a little bit of time left. All right, so kind of summarize it up. You know, it's designed and built on 7. Drive home the messages about total stopping distance, all 3 parts. Focus your discussion points around the items at the bottom of page 89 and the range cards. Know your students, know the message you want to deliver. Try and relate these items to the classroom e-course, you know, and practice your discussions, practice your demos on this. Any questions? Did it help at all? Did everybody already know this stuff, or is this new to anybody? And you don't have to really admit that it's new to you, but did this help at all?
No, I just think it reinforces in how I think, because I think we're thinking the same way, and how to get a message out to the student and get them thinking about what your how to use your reaction time, and not just take it as, oh, I'll stop, you know, type thing.
It seems like a lot of confusion comes from combining the word reaction to mean perception and reaction. In our context, it's always better to say perception. Reaction is pretty constant unless you consider perception part of the reaction. So I hope I'm not confusing the issue here, but we're really about trying to drive home the perceptive part of this, which the traffic safety reconstructionists combine perception and reaction into just reaction. So reaction is a constant for most people. It's a matter of the perception that we're trying to get at here and keep the mind active to identify that trap.
Okay, good. If that's it, Don, you want to take it back, or do you want to pass to somebody else?
Go ahead and give it back to me if you would.
Sure. I will stop. And where are you on the list? Okay, you should have it.
All right, thank you, sir. And does everybody see guided discussion yet?
I think I see actually. There it is.
Yeah.
All right. Teresa, are you able to speak yet?
Somebody's in chat.
All right. So I'm gonna change direction here real quick. I'm gonna launch a poll. If you would all please just answer the questions and send them back, I'd greatly appreciate it.
Hey, Don, on that last question, do we get our cards pulled if we answer no?
Yes.
I did not say that, Ray. That was not me. That was someone's hijack.
Oh, I can't, yeah, I got you.
You got a card? What? I'm missing something here.
Hey guys.
Well, I had to print it myself, but
got about 73% finished now.
I click submit, nothing happens. It's supposed to go away after submit.
There might be more questions, Ray. I did the same thing. That it keeps
Scroll down, perhaps.
Oh, yeah, I missed it. Thank you.
The problem here is that if you haven't had an online one before and you just leave question 2 blank, it won't work. You have to put something in for question 2.
So basically, we have to lie.
Choose the best answer. Kind of cool. So once again, trying out new things to see what we may be able to do in the future. Is there anybody who hasn't finished? I know some people may not have the capability on the phone. And just for your edification, you can see how it all worked out there. I'll give you a few seconds to look through it.
Glad to see the last one was all yes.
Some people were kind of worried about that one. And so we're going to go ahead and stop that now, and we'll go back to the slides. I'm going to make an executive decision because we're almost up at an hour. I'm going to go skip the guided discussion. We'll save that for a later date. And then we'll just kind of open up the floor for generalized questions since we have a VIP in the audience. If there's anything you want to ask or throw out there for others to know, please do so at this time.
I have a question. On the change in the way we refer to the 1 second delay by using it once and then changing it to perception reaction time, is that so that we facilitate their learning as opposed to us instructing them? In other words, it seems to me that's what it's for. I just want to make sure. In other words, by changing that, the way we refer to that delay to perception and reaction time, are we introducing that idea to them so that we don't have to talk about it so much as give them something to talk about?
So, first, I think that's a creative practice, so it's not like a mandatory change. We're not mandating you do this. Ray, you want to add in, or do you want me to do it?
No, I agree with you. I've heard three really good creative practices. I hope somebody submits, a couple of you. By the way, we're probably going to change best practice to creative practice just to get that terminology correct. But yeah, I think whatever you use to achieve the objective, there's different ways to get there. We don't have to be that specific on the language just so the objective of the exercise is met.
Well, I wasn't so, what I'm trying to emphasize for my purpose is that how we phrase things and when we introduce phrases and how we change to new phrases can literally facilitate or inhibit how they learn. And so I think it's a great idea to find a good way to phrase things so that it leads them in a direction without forcing them.
So the theory behind it is really, this isn't about 1 second delay, and that's so much of what we hear about is now we're going to add a 1 second delay. Well, so every time you say that, you're minimizing what it's really about. Now we're going to add perception reaction time. And that's just it, is just to get it off that subject of people saying, now we're going to add a 1 second delay to this, which kind of minimizes the purpose of the whole thing. That's all.
I see.
Yeah, I think we're looking for language to help rider coaches understand the key point. It's tough to do that when you're trying to be rather cryptic in your wording and not explain it too much. Otherwise, we'd have a rider coach guide that's 3 times longer. So it's a matter of how you interpret it and what you think will best meet the needs for your students and getting them to achieve the objective. But I think what we've seen, and Al mentioned it, is that rider coaches seem to not understand that exercise, and that the 3/4 to 1.5 seconds is normally non-distracted time when you're not focused on something. In exercise 7, they're focused on those 2 cones, the cue cone, or they're focused on the rider coach making that signal. So that's all braking distance. What we have to do is add to that, and we really are adding perception. because the mind, if they're looking directly at a trap that's going to happen, they're at a great advantage. So it's trying to play into the fact, have an active strategy where you identify traps and escape paths. You don't have that particular perceptive delay if it's already in mind. Now that kind of overcomplicates it maybe a bit, but that's really what we want to try to get accomplished there, is get the people to think differently, to add to all the things you've already added to what we're saying.
I see. I see.
I hope I was clear on that. But, we'll spend some more time at RRETs and IRETs on this particular one. We do a lot more in quality assurance in that particular exercise, just to get the understanding out there, because there's normal distraction, and then there's the distraction we always hear about in traffic. Normal distraction is at 3/4 to 1.5 seconds.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'm going to do it to you one more time. This will be an exit poll. And I'm going to get rid of this because it's the wrong one. And then as we're doing this, I'll just put it out there. If you want to, if you kind of liked what we did here and you would like to do it some more, feel free to personal message me, give me a phone call, send me an email, Facebook, FaceTime, whatever. Has everybody got the polling up?
If there's any other topics that people want to discuss, it might be good to hear that too.
Sure. Did everybody get the second polling there?
Yeah, it's up.
There we go. But feel free to talk to each other about what you would like and send it back, and maybe we can schedule another one of these in the future, of course. As this is going on, I want to thank Ray for showing up. As always, pleasure to gain knowledge from you. Teresa, sorry it didn't work out. We'll get it back online and make it work. And Alan, thanks for your contributions. They're greatly appreciated.
Sure.
Not just the presenters, but to everyone present. Thanks. I always learn when I'm surrounded by my tribe. Thank you.
I love hearing that word.
Not sure who's responsible for putting all this together, but that was excellent. It was the first time I've ever been engaged in something like this. Spent a lot of time trying to figure out the semantics of how to make this work on my phone. But this was great. I'd really like to see this again.
Thanks, Mark. I appreciate that. A lot of people came together and did a lot of fun things to make this work.
Takes a village to make a rider coach, right?
It does. It does. And while we're spending a couple moments here just talking about it, I greatly appreciate all of you. It's great to be able to hear from you and hear what you're thinking and see your faces as we do this as well, for those who are able to.
Well, let me ask you a question. Is it possible, I monthly have rider coach meetings, and is there a way that we could maybe schedule this, and when I have a rider coach meeting, and bring them all together to listen to you guys, because this information was very, very interesting. So, and I have 6 rider coaches that I think would gain more just listening to the inputs that you guys and the answers that you have been providing today. especially exercise 8. I learned a lot there.
Thanks, Sal. Yeah, we can work these things out. Contact me and we'll see what we can do. Of course, anything we can do to push for an improvement culture within the tribe, I'm willing to try out.
Especially, I was going to add in, especially in today's day where, we have a lot of sites that can't get out there and teach. It might be worthwhile. I know that in New York, we're already having conversations about the inability for us to do on-site PDWs. Can we do a remote PDW, something like this? So those, I would think that anybody can jump on this to an extent.
So I shared the results for those who wish to take a look at it. I have the intention to record this all. It may take me a couple days to work through the if, ands, and buts with this, but I'll try to get this posted back out there. And once again, if you're interested, contact me and I'll try to send you a copy once I figure it out. Any other last comments?
Hey, Donald, you should be able to just upload it to Facebook onto our thing eventually. I mean, like pretty quickly.
Well, what I found with the recording yesterday in some of our tests is they're rather large and don't ship well. So I'm going to have to take some time to trim it up and repackage it so that it's small enough to fit on Facebook. I hope I can get it small enough that it'll be able to accept it.
Thanks, Donald. Thanks,
Thank
Dr.
you,
Ray.
Donald.
Thanks, Alan.
All right.
Appreciate it, everybody.
Thanks,
Everybody.
Don.
Welcome. Take
Have a
care.
great
Stay
day.
safe.
Stay safe and healthy.
Thank you, Donald.
Likewise. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Bye, Lynn.
Thank you.